r/AskReddit. People of Reddit. What did you laugh at? Only to realize it wasn't a joke.
Claim your free AirPods today by clicking the first link in the description down below.
I was chatting with an elderly security guard at the movies, and he was talking about having a degree he never used. He said, "Now, I only use it to decorate my bedroom wall." I laughed and he said, "You laugh now." I laugh about it sometimes, but I cry most of the time. The other day I requested an Uber and made small talk with the driver. Turns out he was a civil engineer making good money, but moved to the US due to family reasons. It's very sad to hear these types of things. Edit. So this took place in New Jersey and the driver is Dominican. He told me how he worked on residential buildings that were located in small towns to cooperating with others to make a building or to located in Santo Domingo, the capital. He understands English and can speak it fairly well, but we mainly spoke Spanish because I really love speaking my native tongue. Oh man, can relate to this. Well, I mean my dad. He studied his as off in China to get a good degree, but came to France with my mom because they were told life was better here. Well, I don't really know if it's that much better. His best friend who stayed in China got a degree somewhat similar to his and is now one of the lead engineer for General Motors in the USA, while my parents are running a Japanese restaurant. Not sure France was worth it. One of my best friends, a twin, in college told me she was pregnant. She had played jokes on me before, so I laughed and said, "No ducking way, you're the smart one." I didn't believe my wife was pregnant for like 2 weeks before I realized it wasn't a joke. I was sitting in the doctor's office thinking, damn, she's sure taking this thing pretty far. Okay darling, it's been 6 months. Stop it already. It's not funny anymore. This happened to me a few days ago. I received a private Facebook message of what I can only call word soup. It was seemingly random, but just barely cohesive enough to make sense at times, like really riding that uncanny valley. I assumed it was some sort of bot that used markup chains, like /r/subreddit simulator, from scraping posts on my friends list, because it had references to things, places and people I knew, and even posted photos from people's albums. So, I screenshotted it and posted it because it was legitimately hilarious. I mean, it had such winners, as if you're her love you have to prove all others are inferior to you in bed with Jill. I was like, "Hey everyone, check out the weird ramblings of this bot." An hour or so later, I got a message from another friend that explained that this was actually an old mutual friend from high school who had suffered a psychotic break and was schizophrenic. Sometimes he goes off his meds, or his family doesn't keep an eye on him, and he makes tons of Facebook accounts and messages this hit to people. They'd been getting them for years, and I must have fallen into his crushes. Suddenly it wasn't so funny anymore and was rather tragic. I deleted the post and continued to block the next 6-7 aliases that kept sending stuff like that all night. Went from hilarious to sad to alarming in the span of a few hours. That sounds crazy. I was legitimately laughing until the end when I just felt really bad for that guy. Don't. I mean, it'd suck. But just cause one person has a psychotic break doesn't mean the rest of us have to put up with it. Source: former EMT that was attacked several times because people stopped taking their meds. A girl writhing around on the ground at a festival. I thought it was performance art. She was actually having a really bad acid trip and paramedics were rushing over. The looks from her friends as I lamely tried to explain myself will haunt my dreams. One time my dog had a seizure and fell into a laundry basket, and it looked like he was dancing. It was pretty funny. My so was mortified. My boyfriend at the time had a dog that ate the crotch out of underwear. Clean or dirty, she ate them. We used to put the waistband around her neck like a trophy, only a few minutes. They were not tight on her neck at all. She was always mildly ashamed looking. One time I went to do it, and she whimpered and started to have a seizure. Even wet herself. I felt fucking horrible. Like I had traumatized her into a full-blown seizure. We never did it again, and I still feel awful about it to this day. Your dad just cut his finger off with the push mower. Wow. Did they recover the finger? Or did it become mulch? It was under a seat in the car. A friend's grandmother died. When I asked how she died, she said she choked on a piece of banana. My wife's grandma died, and I told my work that I'd need a few hours off to attend the funeral. Boss's response was, "That's terrible. How is she?" To which I said, "She's dead." Not my brightest moment when I realized she was asking about my wife. To be fair, the way he asked could have meant either. Your boss needs to be clear. I have a slight hearing problem, which has led to several awkward forks pass situations. The worst one was when I was a cashier at Walgreens. A woman came up to pay, and I asked how she was doing, and she replied with a sigh and "Oh, I just found out." I couldn't hear the second part, so I asked her to repeat. I still couldn't hear the second part, and I didn't want to make her keep repeating. But her delivery sounded like a dry joke, so I just politely laughed. She gave me the dirtiest look and said, "What's so funny about my husband having cancer?" I definitely heard her that time. Alright, but in your defense, who the hell announces that kind of information to a Walgreens cashier? You'd be surprised what people tell cashiers. I was definitely surprised. People would sometimes treat me like a free therapist. Especially when it was slower over at the beauty counter. Edit, autocorrect making me look bad. I once introduced myself to a gentleman who said, "My name is X, or you can call me Grey Wolf," and I kinda chuckled/snorted, but then kinda instantly realized, "Oh, you're part native, aren't you?" Yup. To be fair, however, this was in the Space Coast of Florida. I would have thought he was a furry tbh. Now, furries traditionally introduce themselves with "Oh, whoa, what's this?" When I first met my best friend at uni, she showed me a picture of her brother. I laughed really hard at the picture and said, "Why is he pulling such a silly face? He's got Down syndrome." Cringe. Whoop TSSSS, yeah. I was taking a cave tour in West Virginia, and at one point the tour guide said scientists believe that these markings on the rocks were made by erosion from rainfall over time. But we know that it was actually created by the waters from Noah's flood. I laughed unpleasantly and involuntarily, and the guide glared at me for the rest of the trip. Ha ha ha. Oh, you're serious? Let me laugh even harder. Ha 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 ha. The proper way to respond to that. One time I walked into my school and I looked at my friend who was very upset and said, "What happened? Your cat died?" It's an Italian saying, and he said, "No, my mom did." I laughed for a while because he was one to make those type of jokes. Little did I know, the opposite happened to me. My friend just deadpanned that his mom had died. But he wasn't really broken up about it because he hated her. This was totally believable. His mom isn't really part of his life. He had me going for like half the school day. I had a friend in high school come up to me in the hallway and said, "My dad died today," in a happy voice. I did a double take and asked him something like, "Wait, really?" And he just said yep and left. He's an odd guy. I used to have lunch with this guy I worked with. We became really good friends. All of a sudden he stopped coming to my office. I asked him why, and he told me it was because I think you have a crush on me and you make me very uncomfortable. I'm also a guy who is 12 years younger than him. He is very ugly and has cerebral palsy. I laughed, then I realized he was serious. He has an extremely jealous wife who put all these weird thoughts in his head. As soon as I realized he wasn't joking, I said, "Do you realize how ugly you are?" I was in shock and it just came out. I felt really bad. Rejection hurts. It's okay. It was one of the weirdest interactions I ever had. You can't wear ponchos on campus anymore because we've decided it could possibly be offensive to someone at a student union meeting. It was the pause before someone. The entire lecture theater took it as a funny joke about political correctness. She was deadly serious. White people determining what is racist for other races. You couldn't possibly make this up. It reminds me of a story I read today. A teacher told his students about the importance of helping people in need. He told them they should try and find people to help. Next day he asks, well, who helped somebody yesterday? 3 students held their hands. He asked one of them what did he do, and he replied, the three of us hang out. And we saw an old blind man waiting for the bus. So we lifted him and helped him get to the other side of the street. We didn't stop even when he yelled. And even when he kicked us. It was hard, but we did it. TL, doctor, some people don't need your help. Even if you think they do. I was pretty ignorant in high school. And our friend group was one that would bust each other all the time without many boundaries. A friend was telling us about how his father died of breast cancer at the lunch table. I thought he was messing with me, so I kept laughing. Telling him to quit his bullshit. Me being a ducking dumb teenager assumed only women could get breast cancer. And just rolled my eyes when he kept saying it was true. This proceeded for the entire lunch period. It wasn't until after lunch period was over and someone else came up to me and confirmed the fact that I realized what a gigantic asshole I had just been. I have witnessed the exact same scenario where a friend didn't believe my best friend's brother had committed suicide the night before. When lunch was over I pulled him aside and he still didn't believe me. It would be hard to believe, especially why on earth he was in school within hours of his brother's death. The parents sound particularly cruel. Okay, so I was at my best friend's high school grad party at his house. And he invited some of his other friends, not from our school, to come too. I always goofed around in high school, and today felt like any other day. This kid, who was nicknamed Beaties, and I were getting along fine when I noticed some type of string hanging from his waist belt. I couldn't really make out what it was, so I assumed it was a tag to his clothes or something similar. Being an immature, unaware high schooler, I thought nothing of the context of where we were, or thinking anything would be inappropriate for me to crack a remark or joke. I took his string and started tugging on it, and even asked, lol, what is this? Your stupid inflatable pants? He looked down and didn't give the reaction I was hoping, and he turned and said, no, jackass. It's actually my insulin pump. Which is where I found out his name wasn't Beaties. It was Bits. Ick now. Short for diabetes. What a terrible nickname. I mean, he seemed to be okay with the nickname part as a way of dealing with it. However, he was significantly less receptive to my uncomfortable fit of laughter that ensued. A young lady in the choir, who had beautiful dark hair, lustrous, long Italian, arrived at rehearsal as a blonde. Thanks to this really fake looking wig she had on over her natural hair. It screamed fake wig. And looked like she was trying to be funny. Just to bring a little light humor to rehearsal. One of the tenors asked, did you get that wig from Sears? She said, actually yes. At which point everyone laughed. Turns out it was really true, she did get the wig from Sears. And she thought it looked great. Whereas everyone else thought it looked so unnatural and wrong on her. So relieved to get to the end of your comment and not find out she had cancer and had started chemo. Just a bad wig for no reason. Carry on. I also thought that was where this was heading. I was in a preemptive cringe. I was a preteen at Bible camp, and one of the leaders was sharing the story of his upbringing. It got real intense, and he ended that intense part of the story with, and now my brother is an alcoholic. His tone and the timing was rather comedic, and I thought he was doing that to break some tension, and without thinking anything else of it, I let out a huge, organic ha. Everyone turned to look at me. I tried to fake a coughing fit to play it off. Don't think it was very convincing. You see, that's when you go up to him in private. Tell him you sympathize because you're an alcoholic. Develop a drinking problem. And join AA. Going to middle school and needing to make a phone call home before I had a cell phone from the office. The secretary said, it'll cost you 50 cents. I laughed. She didn't. That was the moment I realized that despite being a good kid, adults suddenly wouldn't like or trust me simply because I was in middle school. It was jarring. Okay, well, I don't have 50 cents and there's blood coming out of my butthole, so how do you want to resolve this? Tampons are 50 cents. 2. Met with a custom wedding ring maker. He asked what my budget was and started a $20k. If I had a drink I would have spit all over him. Felt bad that I laughed in his face. He was totally serious. My budget was $2K. Edit. My highest comment by a long shot is about laughing in someone's face. Man. Could be worse. I will try to reply to everyone. I have never gotten this many messages ever. Thanks guys. My wife's ring cost like $5K and I still feel ripped off years later. $20K. Yay GTFO. Buying a ring is like buying a car. No matter how good of a deal you got, you're still going to feel like you got ripped off. Edit. I get it guys. You all like your cars. I was shooting for a smartassery and missed. The guy who worked receiving at my old job came up to me one day and said your car's been crushed. I laughed. He insisted that I go outside and look. A trucker had knocked down the I-beam which holds up the gate I was parked right next to. It just barely scratched my bumper and headlight cover. I filed a claim and pocketed about $500. Props to that guy for preparing me for the worst. Someone a couple years ago in my town had their car go into a sinkhole and get totaled. I imagine that was interesting to find. Hey man. God said you don't get to have a car anymore. God damn it. Yeah. Pretty much.